Okay, now that we've set up the Media Pro gallery and we've got a simple gallery ready to go, I've gone ahead and added a few more media items in. So if I preview this in the browser, you'll see that I just have several more images added and a couple more added to each collection, so we have more to work with. Now let's take a look at some of the specific features of Media Pro Gallery and tweak some of the settings for our liking. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the gallery a little bit bigger. So we can actually extend this gallery out as wide as we want, or we could do full width gallery. So if we do full width, we just need to make sure it extends to the left and right edges of the canvas here. And let me drag it out, and there we go. So now we have a full width gallery. Let's preview that and see how it looks. Okay, so you can see it's taking up the full width of the screen. Now the only issue that I have with this is it's just a little bit tight to the edges. I'd like a little bit of spacing around it. And that's a setting that we can easily tweak within the gallery itself. If I open up the gallery panel, we go into the gallery layout options, you'll see that I have lots of different options for padding and that sort of thing. So you can revise the gallery as you see fit on the canvas. So let's work through each of these panels. I'm going to just move this component over a little bit so it's easier for us to see that panel. And let's talk about some of the specific options within. So of course we covered up here, we have things like ordering options and whether we want to use custom collection display buttons, which I'll set up in a moment. But let's go through each of these gallery drop downs and see what's in there. So on the first one, our gallery layout, we have our layout type. We have uniform grid, mosaic grid, constrained grid, or list. Now, the best way to explain these different options are if you have photos that are all a consistent uniform aspect ratio, so for example, a square, you would want to use the uniform grid gallery. If you have different aspect ratios like portrait or landscape, we'd recommend the mosaic or the constrained grid galleries, but you can try these all out and see what works best. The list option is better if you're just using this on a mobile device because it stacks them all in a perfect list, but that doesn't look very good for many of the thumbnails. Next up, we have options for columns. So how many columns do we want max? So we could go anywhere from 2 to 12 columns. I'm going to leave this at 4 for now. Next, we have the padding. So this is where if you've got it set to the left and right edges, you probably want to apply some padding so that we've got some space around it. So let's add maybe 50 pixels of padding here. Next up, we've got thumbnail margin. This just controls some of the margins on the thumbnails themselves. So I'm going to leave that set at 0. Next up, we have layout arrangement icons. Right now they're set to hide. Let me turn them on for a sec so they say show, and I'm going to preview this gallery again in the browser. Let me span it out to the full width, and let's preview it and see how it looks. Okay, so now you can see in our preview we've got some nice spacing around the outside of the gallery, and these are the layout arrangement icons. So you can switch between a grid view or the list view. Notice the list view doesn't look great on a desktop device, but on a mobile device it looks really good. So you can turn on and off those options. Let me close some of my preview windows here, and let's jump back into Muse and continue on looking at settings. So jumping back into the gallery layout section, let's have a look at some more of the options in there. Now we have thumbnail options. So we can have a filter on our thumbnail. We could have, for example, our thumbnail blur. Then we can decide we want that thumbnail to blur on the hover state, or normally it's blurred and it will become clear on the hover state. We have the filter transition duration, so how long it takes for that filter to apply. We can even do a custom cursor if you'd like over the thumbnail. So we could set this to custom, and we just need to upload image files for our cursor. So you could do something like a magnifying glass if you wanted. Next, we have a zoom effect on the thumbnail. We have the ability to include an icon on the thumbnail itself, and then we can actually put an icon that we've specified from Font Awesome in this block. So there's a link here to Font Awesome, and all you need to do is just copy the icon name. It looks like this, +-square-O. The last two options are just if we want to enable or disable overlays on the thumbnail, so you can have a little title, or you can have the custom icon come up, or if you just want blank thumbnails, you can turn all of those off. Closing that up, let's go to the slideshow settings, see what we have. So in slideshow settings, we have things like the animation. And if I open up the transition animation, you see we have tons of different options here. So let's pick something like scale up for now. We have the easing controls. So again, tons of easing controls. How long does it take to transition between each different slide in the lightbox? So right now that's ½ a second, that works. Now we have a video maximum width. So we haven't actually added a video to our loader. Let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to open up one of these loaders, And let's go down to the last item. We have item 5. I'm going to have the file be an external source. I'm going to use a YouTube video for that. And if I go to YouTube and let's snag a video here. So we'll just click one of the MuseThemes ones. Okay, here we go. And let's just grab the link in the URL and jump back here. Let's drop it in. Okay, so we'll put it in the external source location. Perfect. Now the thing with videos is it is unable to generate a thumbnail. So we're going to need to make our own thumbnail, in which case I have one ready on my computer here. Video thumbs, and it's going to look like this. So let's add that. Okay, and right now it's added to the lifestyle collection. That's fine. So we've got a video added in, and let me stretch this back out a little bit so it's bigger, and let's see how this looks. Okay, so you can see our videos loading up here. Obviously our thumbnail size is not ideal for this gallery type, but that's okay. And if we click on the video, again, it launches within the browser here. Let me mute that. So the video is looking a little small compared to our photos, and that's where that setting that I was just on in the widget itself comes into play. So let me open up the gallery component again here. And under the slideshow settings, we have the video maximum width. If we were to set this to something, say 1,000, it would look bigger. Next up, we have the ability to show and hide those various options within the lightbox itself. So we have a download button, a loop button, the ability to disable swipe, disable full screen. Those are all options that you're seeing within the lightbox itself up here in the top corner. So you have full control over that. Totally understand if you don't want people to download your images or anything like that. So you can turn everything there off if you wish. Next up in Lightbox settings, we have different style settings and different sizing settings for our Lightbox itself. So within the Lightbox, we have that thumbnail bar, and we can change colors. We have the ability to disable or enable the thumbnails within the Lightbox itself. Different sizing options, again, different filters for those thumbnails and transition settings, lots and lots of different settings. Now, keep in mind too that they are not these thumbnails. They are the thumbnails that open up within the Lightbox itself if you want them to look different. You can also just close that completely or disable it completely if you don't want thumbnails happening within the Lightbox itself. Let's close that, jump back into settings. So we've covered all the Lightbox settings here. In the next box, we have collection button settings. So I'm using the default collection buttons right now, and they look like this at the top. They're just simple, they've got a little outline on them, and they work quite nicely. But you can have custom buttons if you wish. The ability to control the custom buttons is right here at the beginning: collection display style, default buttons, no buttons, or custom buttons. And depending on what I select there, it's going to change the options I have in this panel. So right now, these are based on the default buttons, so I can go ahead and change fonts, colors, sizes, everything you need. If I change this to a custom button, you'll see that most of these are grayed out. So the way that I can use the custom buttons is I need to use this other little widget component that came with it called collections. And what that says is, what is the custom button graphic style name that you want to apply to which collection? So I'm going to add a custom button for the collection called wedding, just like that. So it says set up a graphic style and set it to the wedding collection. Whoops. So I'm going to set up a graphic style called wedding, and that's going to be the collection button for that. So to do that in the fastest way possible, let me just open up the widget library, and I'm going to download or drop in a state button. Just as is, I'm not going to change anything. Let's set up a graphic style for that state button. I'm going to call that graphic style wedding, just like that. Perfect. And that matches up with what I have in this collection kind of loader component. And let's preview it and see if it works. Now keep in mind, I've only made one collection button where I would normally have them for each of the different categories, but if we click on that, you can see it filters by just the wedding. So you can have tons of different custom buttons here, and all you'll need to do is just duplicate this small component widget, just like that, to set up as many custom collection buttons as you want. So for now, I'm going to delete that state button out, and let me jump back in the gallery and go back to the default buttons because they're working better for our preview. Okay, so style options, we covered everything in there. The last few boxes are a little smaller. We have caption styling, so we've got colors, opacity, and different fonts for our captions. Lastly, we have the autoplay settings. We can enable or disable autoplay, we can set a delay, or we can turn off some elements like the progress bar. Within the zoom settings, we have the ability to control our zoom scale and our zoom delay. And the zoom icon is actually up in the lightbox itself. You can see it up here. So we have different settings that you can control for that, depending on how you want users to zoom in and interact with your photo. And finally, in our last drop down here on the widget, we have social sharing options. So we can turn that on and off, or we can enable the different networks that we want within that box. And again, that is within the lightbox itself. So as you can see, a huge widget, lots and lots of options. Basically every option we could think to give you, we've given you. Now this gallery is meant to be controlled within Muse fully, so clients are not going to be adding images themselves to an outside location unless they have the ability to interact within Muse. If you need a gallery where your customers can edit it without opening Muse, you should check out our Gallery Connect, which is built specifically for that reason. The thing that Gallery Connect does not have, which this does have, is the ability to filter collections. And we will explore, if you say that you'd like to see it, a version of this widget that is powered through our Connect system. So where you could add images through a spreadsheet or through an outside source and control it that way. We might be able to do that, so let us know if that's something you're interested in. Thanks again for using this widget. We hope you really enjoy it, and we cannot wait to see what you do with it. Cheers.